everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And have to say, fitting in between different things, this has taken a bit more prep time than I envisioned, but it's a bit of a follow up and a bit of a fun video today. Not book related, but actually, as a couple of the shorts have just released and also, or released sporadically. Um, We are now going to look at some ideas and concepts for different Justice League rosters, going off of the idea from the shorts, because I didn't want to just leave it at a couple of random DC shorts, just tag them in and then don't do anything else. So here we are with a actual main video towards these things, and I am just going to. Sorry, I just saw a bit of lightning. um, that was interesting. um, yeah, the thing about this is that there are particular rules that are going to be followed. Not the same ones that were followed to set up the league for the idea of this story DC continuity if I was making it, but just some basic rules. And the first one is going off of what the league are known for, which is the seven main members. So we've got seven main members, and this is the layout. So we've got a leader, we've got a co-leader, we've got three specialists, two free choices, and then a wild card. Now, the leader and the co-leader can be sort of whatever in terms of powers and that, as long as they have like the leadership ideas. The specialists can be a wide variety of things. It can be magic, it can be psychic, it can be elemental, it can be an innumerable amount of things like talent or particular skill like science or stuff like that. The two free choices are just like people to be able to give in extra power, and they're like the power players, or not the power players, but like the extra support and strength. And then the wild card is one that sort of semi fits the bill for these ideas, but also might be a bit more out there than what some people are thinking about when they think about these areas. And I know at least one of them might catch some people out. But anyway, and I haven't got it like set, it's just set so you will see all the pictures, but I'm going to break it down and go through why these are the way they are picked. But first up, we have the Warriors. Now, the Warriors are a bit of an interesting one. As you can see right at the top there, it would be a league led by Wonder Woman with Aquaman as the sort of second in command, although I could imagine the two of them probably having some arguments and debates about that. But when you think about warrior-like characters of the Justice League, I mean, outside of Wonder... Well, the only other ones I could realistically think of when you think on this is probably one of the Hawks. But Wonder Woman and Aquaman are just at another power level in comparison to them. So, yeah, Diana would lead this team. Arthur would be the second leader, but they're both warrior cultures. They're both warrior people. So it's an interesting start for this. But then we look at the rest of this league, and we have the original Our Man. And I threw him in, and his is still sticking with these different concepts. Like, he is a specialist because of his intelligence. He's not ranked amongst the absolute smartest of the DC heroes, but he's still incredibly intelligent. Inventing the Miraculo and setting in the timer and everything. it can give him the boost. He can be a sort of backup kind of tactical advisor, and there are other elements like in in the Legends of Tomorrow version of the Justice Society, he's actually the one who leads it. So, and yeah, it is one of these concepts where more he is the technical support there, but then moving on from him, we've got a classic warrior character when people think about DC, Etrigan, Jason Blood. The mix of the two, you've got the warrior and the fighter of Etrigan, with the demon powers of the fire breath, the sword, his strength, and everything. And then you've got Jason Blood, who is. I've never really known how strong of a magic user, if any, that Jason Blood is without Etrigan, but he is still incredibly intelligent. He's very well scholared. He's got a lot of he's got a lot of knowledge to dish out towards helping others, and it's another. He is an interesting pick for this because he is again a very serious character. He would take these things quite intensely and seriously, although there might be some reluctance to summon Etrigan forth. But then when you think about warriors, you think about fighters and all of that. It's kind of difficult to think about a main 7 lineup without one Green Lantern in. And honestly, as much as I love Hal and Kyle, I think for something like this, it had to be John or Guy, and then it came down to personal preference, and the personal preference led more to John Stewart over Guy Gardner. Lots of random noises going on at the moment. Um, so yeah, and John with his dutiful nature, because he is by far the most dutiful of the 4 main human Green Lanterns. So having him in the mix, it would be a fairly good mold, although he can also have some light-hearted nature. But then we've got the 2 supporting groups here. We've got Atom Smasher, and the warrior. He's a fighter. He is a brawler through and through, and the size he can come to, like, I have to admit, this lineup is not the most powerful. It's still got a fair amount of power to it, but it's not the most powerful. But you've got Atom Smasher there who can take on a lot of powerful foes and do a decent amount of damage, and would be quite successful at being able to help hold the line against things. Then you've got Dr. Light, and the second Dr. Light this is, and again, an interesting pick, I would say, but one who does have a unique sort of power basis, because the issue with a team like this is, with the exception of John, you don't exactly have a whole lot of like ranged power to it, and or even flight potential, and that's where someone like Dr. Light could come in quite handy in like being able to aid against these sort of things. But then for the wild card, you've got Oliver Queen, and it is very much the sort of basis that the old DC AU goes off of as to why he got recruited into the league, to keep them honest, to keep them grounded, and for them to remember the sort of little guy and things like that, because that's in a lot of cases what he sort of represents in the league, in a lot of cases. And when you've got this massive, or not massive roster, but you've got all of these figures who have a lot of power to them and of like warrior or fighters in nature, because I know that Jon Stewart's thing got changed a bit from like construction to the Marines and stuff and on and off. But or was that Guy Gardner? One of them had that happen to them. Um, Oliver could not only bring out a bit more of the light-hearted side, but he can also maintain that human focus, and also he's someone who would just never throw in the towel and give up. So that's the sort of warrior kind of league in my book. Um, like Atom Smasher and Doctor Light could be exchanged out for other characters. I'm aware of that, but this is the sort of pick I went for. I feel like if you throw in one of the Hawks, they're going to probably end up at odds with Diana or Arthur a lot more than being helpful with their strength and all of that. So yeah, that's that pick. But moving on to the second one. This is a what if. Now, I do need to explain what I mean by what if. This is what if the original 7 members of the Justice League have vanished for some reason, and this is going off of the traditional idea of the original 7, so that means no Shazam, no Cyborg. This is Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman. Hang on. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter. That's the 7 I'm going from. Sorry, I was trying to count with something in my hand and it caused me to lose track. But this is the sort of team that I could imagine taking that spot. You've got... And this is also a bit different where I could imagine this team being formed primarily by Nightwing, but he wouldn't pick himself to be the leader. That's where Black Lightning would come in, sort of similar to what's happened in Young Justice. But yeah, he would step back and allow Lightning to be the leader of all of that. Whilst he would be happy to take the second in command, and you look at this team and it's a mix of sort of like young heroes and a few of the Titans. Like you've got the Wally West Flash here, who obviously has been in the League a lot as well, so he's a bit half and half. But then you've got Donna Troy, so you've got the legacy there of all the follow-ups to Batman. In this case, the Barry Allen Flash, and then Wonder Woman. But then you've also got a new Green Lantern in the form of Kyle Rayner, who is normally associated with being the slightly younger of the main sort of 4. And then you've got Kara in there, obviously replacing her cousin. But then you get down to Aquaman and Martian Manhunter. And this is where I could imagine the team switching out a little bit due to maybe lack of access of characters or other areas, or an unwillingness for people from Atlantis to leave after Arthur disappearing, or people or other characters being entrusted to take the place as leaders of the Titans after these 3 vanish. Or not vanish, but end up forming this league. So that's where I could imagine Red Tornado coming in as a support bracket there, as the other sort of strength pick alongside Supergirl, because in this case the 3 specialists, you've got the Speedster, you've got the Cosmic in the form of the Green Lantern, and then you've got the Themysciran, who also, reason why it's Donna Troy is because it also dabbles a little bit into the magical side. But then you have Red Tornado there. And then for the wild card, and this is for a few different reasons and the set of fairly unique powers she actually holds, I've actually got Gypsy. And her ability of sort of phasing, which she has in some areas, her ability to She has a variety of different talents and strengths that for a team, for almost like a younger team, it could come in fairly handy and give them a bit of a unique edge that a lot of people may not anticipate. So you've got some of like the run of the mill sort of like ones who follow up, like the vigilante, the speedster, the lantern, the fighter, the Kryptonian, but then you've got three ones that are much more out there. You've got Black Lightning, you've got an elemental wind figure, and then you've got someone with a whole variety of abilities that are not ones that a lot of people tend to expect. But yeah, it's one that it could be a interesting one. And I just looking at this, I am kind of tempted to do a follow up to this video and take each of these teams and pick out a key villain that they could fight. I think that could be quite fun. But following up from the what if, we have the ones that were from the short, so I don't need to really go into too much detail about them. Batman as the leader, Black Canary as the support, but I could also imagine those two actually switching out, so Canary ends up being the leader and Batman's the support. You've got, again, Carl Rayner as the lantern in this story, you've got Zatanna as the magic user, and then you've got Ray Palmer Atom as the smarts and the intelligence, and then you've got the two backers in terms of Black Lightning and Hawkman in this case, and then you've got Martian Manhunter at the end, and that plays into the same into what I was thinking of in the story and what I did in the short, where at the end of it Martian Manhunter just popped up at the end of it, and that's how it would happen in the story. He wouldn't necessarily join until later. But yeah, I like that little roster. It is a bit different, and I know it's lacking some key things, especially one thing that a lot of people would list that's missing from a few of my lists is the lack of a speedster. But and also it's notable that this one has no Superman or Wonder Woman, and the whole idea behind that in the story was when the Justice League forms in the story that I was just jokingly planning and all of that on the side for a bit of fun. Superman is played very much like how he is in the Batman animation, not the animated series, the second series, the series that effectively followed that outside of the DCAU, the 2004 one, where Superman absolutely behaves like a rogue for most of it. Like, he can do anything, he doesn't need help, he likes to work alone. So he starts as the rogue and Batman starts as the team player, because in this the Bat family is already fairly well established. And then Flash again is one who's out on his own. He's being more rogue and thinking, and more he likes to operate with his own freedom and relatively alone. And then you've got Aquaman and Wonder Woman, who have their own sort of like second story going on, when they've had to sort of combine Themyscira and Atlantis to combat some other threats. So they're busy leading their peoples. So that's why you're lacking some of these mainstay members. And as for like Hal Jordan or Jon Stewart, they are elsewhere in space, so Kyle is the one currently on Earth. Which I do play into in the story, where Kyle trades out with Guy Gardner a lot in the story. So sort of like how in the New 52 films, even though it didn't really do any sort of good job at giving any kind of explanation, you have Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart switch out a little bit. I say they switch out, it happened like once It happened in like the Justice League Dark film, and then it just went back to being Hal Jordan. So, but yeah, that's this team. And then we're into some more interesting ones, which did take a while to think about. The Cosmic Justice League, the Justice League that would focus on combating space threats, and I really should have tried to cover this one up here because, yeah. But you think Cosmic and you think these big kind of threats, and Superman and Martian Manhunter are sort of like the logical picks for the two leaders in this case. So, don't really need to explain what their talents are. They're both quite well known characters. Well, quite. That was a really silly thing to say. One of them is an incredibly well known character. Um, but then we're going on to others, and the whole logic behind this team was this has to be a team that can actually properly breathe in space or operate in space for long periods of time. And I know that, especially in Superman's case, that's a very up and down thing. Half the time he can, half the time he can't. So, but you've got Doctor Fate there, a pretty good, well, an incredibly powerful magical character, one of the most powerful members of the League by a mile. And I mean, anyone who's seen the Young Justice series, season 2, knows that he was able to repulse a massive attack from the War World single handedly. So, or the initial strike, then he had to have a bit more support. But, and then some more known cosmic heroes, you've got Blue Beetle there. You think Space, the Reach, Blue Beetle, that all plays in. You've got a representative of the new gods in terms of Big Barda. I was tempted to put Orion, but I think Big Barda would be the maybe more warrior of the two. I know Orion can go a bit more sort of like Berserker Rage sort of style. Then you've got two picks for like the backup powers. You've got the Jessica Cruz Green Lantern, and I could imagine in this sort of scenario, she would be one of the younger ones, probably alongside Blue Beetle potentially. And they'd be the sort of not proteges, but the ones who require the more guidance and things like that. But so you've got a bit more inexperience in there, which like Clark or Jean can take under their wing and train. And so you've got that, but then you've got a character who always seems quite powerful, but doesn't really ever kind of get a massive focus, and that's the Ray. And he is a strong character, and he does get a lot of showing. Like, he's been shown in the Arrowverse, he's had his own temporary animated series that was fairly short-lived. And he also gives these ideas and aspects of scenarios from an alternate Earth and things. So he gives a bit more wider perspective, because this is, when it comes to cosmic threats, it's not just about having the raw power to combat them, it's also about understanding them. And when you have a magic user, a Kryptonian, a Martian, a reach based, or not reach based, but reach powered hero, a new god, someone from an alternate Earth, and a Green Lantern, you've got you do have a fair amount of ability to launch and be prepared for all kinds of potential threats. So this is like I could imagine a scenario where some of these different leagues are like broken down, like how the Justice League Europe was and everything, and they all sort of operate in the same circles but in different spheres. So you have some of the others that have been listed, but then you have this as like the frontline space defense. And then you've got the wild card of Plastic Man. Because like I said, I was looking at characters who can breathe in space, and loads of people listed him as a character who can because of the way his anatomy works. And the fact that he could shapeshift into all of these different things is something where if handled correctly in space, or even like boosted by something like a Green Lantern power or the magic of Doctor Fate, used correctly, he could end up being an unexpected sort of threat and a sort of strange ace in the hole that no one can quite predict. So it was a jokey pick, but it was a jokey pick based around some sort of seriousness in some cases, because he is a interesting choice to say the least. But that's the cosmic pick. Then we've got the Major Crisis. And I know in some reviews of the fourth Young Justice season, lots of people weren't particularly keen on the magic side. I actually really enjoyed it. And the Major Crisis would be a crisis based on Earth that is forming, that is going to be a much greater threat, and it needs proper sort of guardians and protectors to face it down. Like, it's not something that can necessarily work by you just running up and just punching it hard. It has to be fought particular ways or with smarts or things like this. Similar how the shadow demons had to be fought with like light and stuff like that in Crisis on Infinite Earths. In the proper version of the story, that is. So this team would be formed and led some extent by Phantom Stranger, although he would be the very definition of a background leader. And it would actually be Barry Allen Flash who would be the main leader for it. So you've got the speedster presence there as well as the sort of science knowledge. But then you just look through these characters and you've got Obsidian, and his powers are tied to the Shadowlands and abilities of Shadow, facing around those kind of potential threats. Zatanna again for the magic, the sorcery and all of this. Firestorm, because firstly, powerful in terms of just like fire and nuclear and all that, but also his just sheer ability of being able to transmutate different things and conjure other stuff. All of these different things can come in quite handy to deal with these sort of threats. Then you've got Captain Atom, character who can go blow for blow with the likes of Superman, and in some continuities when he's gone absurdly powerful, has gone to the point of being able to create pocket universes. So, yeah, a fairly good choice for something like this. Being able to adapt to various different kinds of energy and all that. Then you've got Mira, who honestly could trade out and out with the wildcard pick, but it's just her sheer ability to manipulate water and, by extension, other forms of liquid as well. And seeing as this is an Earth-based kind of threat that would be happening despite it being a major crisis, like proper, genuine threats. Well, proper, genuine threats that are, like, threaten the safety of the entire planet. And you've got a character in there who can have an maybe unknown amount of control of the thing that occupies like 70% of that planet's surface. Yeah, it's a pretty wise choice to make, as is the next one, which is the character who, okay, is a bit of a stretch for a Justice League pick, seeing as he tends to be more associated with Justice League Dog, but Swamp Thing. And similar to Mira, his sheer control over nature, which pretty much eclipses any other DC hero. His is just more, because he's like the entity of it. He's the protector of the green itself. So you've got a near omnipotent being. You've got a incredibly powerful speedster, a sorcerer, two science-based heroes, one who can control shadows, and then two who basically can control the fundamental parts of the planet itself. And yeah, so it's a pretty decent team, I'd say, to combat different threats. Though if I had to say one thing, it does lack any sort of like psychic wielder or things to sort of role that the likes of Martian Manhunter or Miss Martian would follow and fit into. But I mean, Magic has that to a small extent, but yeah. And that Major Crisis team did take some time to pick, but next up we are going quite differently to the international team. And no, this is not like the Justice League Europe team where you have the sort of, in some cases, the American based heroes go widespread. You've got this where these are characters from around the planet originally or have deep ties to other parts of the planet. With the exception of the leader, and that's because this is sort of playing off of the Batman Inc. kind of concept with, or the Global Guardians, but it's sort of like a blend of both of those things. So you've got Tim Drake as Red Robin as the leader, but he's the leader because he's the leader for a few different reasons. One of them is that Batman would never leave Gotham City. That's pretty well known about him. But the other thing about it is that Tim is the one who's inherited Bruce's smarts the most and his tactical knowledge in a lot of cases, and even some of his tech. So having him, so he can be the sort of leader as well as the proper tactician and the technical helper. Or, but then you've got an interesting one as the sort of support leader. You have Satara, Satana's father, who definitely plays into the magical assistance, and I am not going to lie, originally he was not in the list, and I actually had Constantine in the list, and as tempting as it was to keep Constantine in there, I could very much imagine that the sort of threats that this team would combat around, because I can imagine this being a relatively ground level team. I'm sorry, but Constantine would just find that so monotonous and boring. Like, he would be such a extensive issue for a team player, and so Zatara was the one that ended up getting picked instead. And his wisdom, because he would be probably the oldest out of this entire team, so he'd be the sort of wise. I don't want to say sage because he's a magic user and that's just easy pickings, but he'd be the one who provides a lot of the guidance and stuff and some of the support. Especially if Tim was ever feeling uneasy or unnerved. You could imagine a character like Satara being there to keep him upright and support him. Because Tim is the one who's inherited the intelligence and all that, but out of all the Robins, he's always the one who seems the most unsure of himself as well. So... But then we go on to the three specialists. And you've got a representative of Atlantis who also has limited magic, but also the certain abilities of manipulation over water in the form of Aqualad, counter version. And he and Tim have some connections through times with the Titans and stuff like that, so they'd get on quite well. And is just a good presence to have. He's a fighter. He's got decent super strength. He has got a lot going for him as a character. Then you have Vixen. And Vixen being able, with her ties to the red, the animal spirits and things like that, she is a character with a lot of versatility and a lot of different powers and strengths. Well, that's what versatility is. But she's also an experienced character. She has a lot of skill sets to her, so a good character to have in your corner as a help, and also, to be honest, when push comes to shove, a straight up brawler when it comes to it. And then you've got one who was initially the wild card pick, but I decided to change it. And you've got Deadman, Boston Brand. And this team, I could imagine being a team that's picked to deal with proper sort of like ground level threats, whether that's different syndicates or trafficking of some description, or all of these different organized kind of crime suits. And when you think of the Justice League or the Justice League Dark or all of these DC heroes, can you really think about a character who would fit the bill better to be a inside spy in one of these groups than someone who can literally possess people as he is literally a ghost? And it's, again, it's very much like the cosmic side with Plastic Man. It's a character who you wouldn't necessarily expect in a lineup like this, and yet is one that he could inadvertently actually be quite well suited for, with his ability to possess and control the minds and bodies of others, hold control over them and things. He'd be able to relay information back to Tim and the team. He'd be able to gain them access to places, figure out villain plans. He'd be able to do all sorts of different things. So, and yes, there are sometimes some sensations where the people sort of like realise what's going on, and they're like what's just happened? Have I just blacked out or something? So there's a risk there, but once the information's relayed across, the risk is kind of, well, it's a bit late to be concerned about it because the information's already gone. So, and working with a character like Tim Drake, it would come in quite handy, the knowledge he'd be able to apply tactically and stuff like that. And it's also why, despite being an international team and fairly ground level, there's 2 magic users, because there are the cases in some continuities where, again, Deadman is a ghost. Sometimes the other magic users have to conjure spells to actually allow him to communicate with the others, like in the Justice League Dark film, where Constantine doesn't want to be a go-between, so he allows them to see each other. Deadman and Bruce, that is. So that's a minor note, but yeah, and he doesn't even have to possess people. He can just sneak in and spy and use the fact that no one can actually see him to be able to do that. But then moving on, we're going into, honestly, 2 that are both fairly powerful for a team like this. This team might be sort of ground level and stuff like that, but it's not exactly weak in terms of rosters. It's a quite a powerful team lineup in a way to combat these kind of threats. You've got Tasmanian Devil and you've got Ice. And again, Tasmanian Devil is probably the definition of the straight up brawler in all of these teams, so one that can take on and hold a front line quite easily, I can imagine. And then you've got Ice, one who's ice-based powers and things like that, working alongside a waterbender like Aqualad. That's quite a powerful combination that they can utilise. So, and then you've got the wild card, which is another connection to the Titans, like Aqualad. In terms of Solstice, bringing in another character from another part of the world who has abilities to manipulate light energy, I believe. Truth be told, I did a brief looking at the character, but I don't fully know too much about them. Like, there are characters that are in these lists that I'll first-hand admit I don't really know too much about, but I do quick looks ups at them and think, okay, they sort of fit the bill for this and are a bit more unique, because I love the Justice League rosters and things like that, but sometimes having the same characters just appear over and over and over again as the frontline picks can get a little bit stale. So throwing in some different ones here, like I could have traded Solstice out for someone like Starfire easily. But instead I have her as another member. So it's a mix of sort of younger teams, and for a team that's combating in this sort of side, it's a team mixed with a lot of natural power and then a little bit of supernatural power. So, and there's another thing about Tim. Tim's pretty much the only one in the team without any sort of power. So, yeah, having someone like Giovanni there to back him up is quite key. But it would be a situation where his skills as a detective and a tactician would be the things that would shine through and effectively earn him his place there as their leader. And that is it. That is the team rosters. There was going to be a grounded level one as well, like a proper grounded level one, but partly I didn't get around to doing it, and also partly I got quite stuck because there's so many ground level DC heroes. Like, initially, and I know this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but initially I actually had that international team being led by a combination of two Robins, like Tim, or former Robins like Tim Drake or Damien, or Tim or Red Hood. And it's like, yeah, neither of those things would work. So, yeah, that's where we are with that now. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching, and please do comment, like, and subscribe. If you have any ideas for your own rosters, please let me know in the comments. And if you have any ideas for like the proper villains that could be associated with these teams, come up with them as well. Like, any part of that's awesome and fun. This is just a bit of fun on the side, away from the main content. So, yeah. But anyway, I will say welcome to the kingdom of Athalas and the world of Fellow Mind Books, and cheerio. Thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you would like to see some similar content to this one, you can click there. Or if you would like to change it around and have an explore of some of the other content, then you can check out the link below, which will be to a playlist. And if you would like to check out the content on other pages or socials, or if you would like to explore some of the other elements in detail, or pick up a book or whatever, or come and chat to me on Twitch when I'm alive, then down there. And as you can see, it has a list of what to expect on each of those platforms. And until next time, welcome to the kingdom of Athalas, the world of Fellow Mind Books. Please do like, please do subscribe, and if you want to, pop out a comment.